Yeah, well, that's great. But I'll tell you, man, it's amazing. The sound I'm getting here, it's crazy.
Okay, good.
Yeah, beautiful. I think you sound better than me, and I'm plugged in directly into the mixer. So.
Well, this is a $1,000 microphone. So.
Oh yeah, that's a couple hundred above mine. So.
Okay.
Hey, what's going on, peoples? Did you miss me? Yeah, it's been a while since I've recorded an episode of the Backstage Cowboys podcast, and the main reason for that is, well, the industry in general has been pissed off lately. And to be honest, so am I. These killer shutdowns get to you for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it's because everything we represent suddenly doesn't mean shit anymore. A friend of mine told me he was fed up of his job and wanted to become a light guy like me. I said, that doesn't exist anymore. Find something else. Yeah, I know I'm dramatizing, and this will all come to an end at some point. But reality is that some of our colleagues didn't make it. I've seen more suicides in the past couple of years than in my whole life. Speaking of which, I have a message. Peoples, the community is still here. You are not alone. If you're in distress, speak out, man. Post something on Facebook or call, text, or email someone, anyone. You wouldn't believe how many friends you have that are willing to go out of their way to give you a hand. I mean it. Alright, enough said. Let's have some fun. On this episode, we talk with a true gentleman, Matthew Coull. Matthew is the owner of the Aileron Group, an event planning and production company. I've known him for quite a few years, as we worked together back when I was an active lighting designer and operator. So, we'll get on with the show after this short word from our sponsor. Always wanted to say that. I sound like a radio announcer. The Backstage Cowboys podcast is brought to you by AVL Media Group and Avolights, who make the best lighting consoles in the world. If you live in Canada, you now have access to the Avolights Academy online learning platform. The cost is $229, and that includes an editor AvoKey delivered directly to your door. Head on over to BackstageCowboys.com and click on the Avolights Academy logo to get all the details. Now, if you don't live in Canada, well, that means you're in another country. So if you're in the United States, head on over to avolights.us. Anywhere else in the world, just go directly to avolights.com and you'll find all the resources available in your country. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is another episode of the Backstage Cowboys podcast. Where's my drummer? Matthew, how you doing?
I am super well, considering what's going on in the planet and what's going on around us.
Yeah,
I'm in a good place right now. I'm a happy guy.
Well, I'm glad for you. I mean, I see that you're active and you're doing all sorts of stuff. I don't know where to begin with you, man. There's a lot of stuff to talk about here.
I wear a lot of hats.
Yeah,
that's for sure. I got a couple.
So,
hats.
Listen, you do have a couple of hats. I mean, when we met, you were you had this company called Aileron.
Still do.
Okay, and you were doing all the corporate gigs for Bombardier, I believe, right?
That is right. I'm with a few other smaller clients, but that's a pretty big client to try to keep happy. So it ends up taking up a lot of your time. But so I got that. I got the Aileron Group thing going on, which is producing corporate events. We do a lot in aviation. We've, when Bombardier split up and went into a bunch of different pieces, I was lucky enough to keep relationships with all the people that were splitting up. So, we're doing stuff with Airbus, Mitsubishi. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, still doing corporate AV. Been in that business, my God, since the early 90s.
Wow.
Professionally, yeah. So it's been a while.
Yeah, that's where we met. I was doing lights for you.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of anecdotes.
And you were very, very good at it. I do recall that. And a hard worker. Holy smokes, man. Like you don't catch too many LDs that, push boxes, if you know what I mean.
I'll take your word for it. I remember one time.
in the day.
Yeah, back in the day, yeah, when I wasn't lazy like I am now. Funny enough, I mean, I was so out of shape at the time.
And that's a whole other story right there, because you're like a whole different person from the guy I met like way back when.
Yeah, funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have helped if I would have had the shape I have now back then. But
kidding.
Whatever. I mean, I was younger. It didn't really matter to me at the time.
Oh, we're all envious.
I remember one time, I don't remember where we were, Atlanta or something. We were lighting up a plane. So we were putting up towers between the planes and hanging these huge lights on the towers.
Yeah.
And I remember with the crew that I had, there was this one particular person. I said, your job, you keep both hands on that road case and you keep it from going anywhere. Because if that rolls off and hits a plane, it's really going to screw up my day.
Exactly. And you see, you got it right away. A lot of guys don't get that, like how expensive these things are that we're working around. And, trussing and genie towers and airplanes just don't mix very well.
No. I was surprised they let us out there, actually.
Yeah, me too. Every time I do it, I'm like, you guys are crazy. But
yeah, I guess they trusted that, the professionalism, and that's one thing that I really admire in you. It's the organization and the professionalism that you've always had, and the recognition. I mean, I remember one time when you guys were setting up a 126-foot LED screen outside. There was a shitload of servers that didn't match up together very well. They weren't synchronized or something like that. You guys spent the whole night on it, and
we did.
Eventually got it to work, which I found funny. Instead of unveiling the new plane, let's build a screen the size of the plane.
Yeah,
that's
a
original.
Crazy idea. Back then, when doing screens that big was just not heard of. Like it actually won a world record for the largest temporary outdoor screen ever built.
Really?
At the time, yeah.
Wow.
It was in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Oh,
believe it or not.
Glad to hear that. Hey, I was there.
I mean, there's been many a screen much bigger built since then, but at that time we had the record, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, just imagine the network.
Well, a mutual friend and a former Backstage Cowboy guest, Yann Bertrand, was the guy behind all of that.
Yeah.
He was the mastermind. I just stood there and shouted, ideas of why it might not be working, which you don't really want when you're troubleshooting. He looked at me a few times with one eyebrow up, like, really? Like, don't you have somewhere to be? But we eventually figured out a way around it and made it work, which is typical of most AV gigs that I've ever been involved in that have an issue. You just keep working it until you either figure it out or figure a workaround out, one or the other.
Yeah.
And it's just being persistent and not giving up, and the show must go on kind of attitude, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's what you have to be passionate to do this job.
100%.
Because that's what keeps you up. That's what keeps you going. That's what kept me going with 80 pounds overweight. It was a passion. I mean, for some reason, I got over everything and just went for it. Listen, As usual, I don't know where to begin. I'd like to ask you one question to start with.
Sure.
We're going to get eventually to what you're doing now, but I'd like to understand where you come from. I mean, where did all this start? What did you know? Where? How did you get to doing what you do now?
I can pinpoint the time exactly when the light went on in my head. I was in grade 4, elementary school.
Wow.
Yeah. And the vice principal of my school, Don Hastings, he invited me to come see a new piece of equipment that the school had just gotten. And it was a U-matic 3/4-inch video recorder. So it had these massive tapes.
Wow.
And a separate video camera with a big wire in between the two. And he says, I think this is something you might be interested in. And when I saw it, I was like, my jaw just hit the floor. And
was
we
that
played with
that
it.
color or black and white at the time?
It was black and white.
Yeah, well, I think we have the same one at our school.
Luckily, I mean, Mr. Hastings is long gone, unfortunately, but I was lucky enough. My daughter had him at her school many years later. And I told him that story, and he remembered it. Mm-hmm. And I thanked him, and I said, the reason I'm doing what I do today is because of you, and I can't thank you enough. And it was the coolest day ever to be able to meet that guy again and to thank him for that moment. But yeah, that set off the fire in my brain, and I was like, I want to do this kind of stuff. So from there, went to high school and joined the computer clubs that there were. Into CEGEP, I did one semester in Pure and Applied, and I'm like, this isn't what I want to do in life. I want to be more creative than this. And I went into creative arts, which was film, television, and sound. And yeah, so studied all that stuff in school, worked at the audiovisual department at the school, and ended up fixing film cameras and repairing cables and doing all kinds of odd jobs at the audiovisual department. Worked in the dark room, monitoring the people that were developing stuff. So always had that, background in technology. My dad owned a Super 8 movie camera. He was into making movies. So, and I still have that camera today.
I think I still have mine too.
Yeah.
I'd have to look.
Try to find a place to develop. The film is another
try to find the film.
Yeah, true. There's actually a resurgence of film coming. I just saw a report about there's a company in the US that is growing, and all they do is develop 35 millimeter film, either black and white or color. And it's growing like crazy. When people see the grain for the first time who have only done digital, they're like, wow, that is amazing. It's like a whole other world,
Yeah.
And it's addictive, and you want that feel. So it's actually getting a resurgence, as is vinyl records and analog audio.
The real stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have Par 64s at some time in the future.
That I highly doubt. I'm not moving those dimmers ever again. I'm not doing it.
Especially that 400 amp transfo. 600 watt, 600 volt.
I just had one of those on a show about a month ago. So.
Oh wow.
So yeah, out of CEGEP, got a job at an audiovisual company that I don't want to name.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone that knows me knows where I worked, but I slaved there for a few years, and I realized that is not what I wanted to do. From there, I got a job at Bombardier Aerospace in their audiovisual department.
Okay. And
serviced all the different departments internally, whether it was photography, they had their own darkroom as well, or if it was videotaping, airplanes taking off, or hanging out of a helicopter, shooting water bombers, doing drops on fires. A lot of really, really cool stuff. then that department got closed down. They outsourced everything to other companies, and I was just right place, right time with a bunch of friends. We opened Aileron Group, and we continued servicing Bombardier for their events. And since then, diversified a little bit, and that's where I am today. So that's how I got to where I am.
Wow. So, and you're still active right now. I mean, even, with COVID and all that, you still have gigs going on. You must do a lot in the States, I suppose, right?
Yeah, we do actually. I was in Vegas in September doing a big show for Bombardier. They do a yearly trade show there that where all the OEMs that make airplanes get together, and it's kind of like a showroom for airplanes. The exact same event that you worked on in Atlanta, actually. Okay. So that event happened this year, surprisingly. It was very different, very difficult, with being tested constantly and wearing masks all the time. It was the new normal, it seemed. But other than the odd live event that actually happens, we've had to pivot like everybody else, and learn how to do these events online. And the studio I'm sitting in right now is used mainly as a video studio for putting together virtual events. And at one point when COVID was at its height, we had 4 of these studios rolling all at the same time. It's simmered down quite a bit with the states opening up as much as they have, but when we were all closed down there, it was hard to find enough people to do what we know how to do. So but it's kind of leveled off now, thankfully. So we're in another transition between doing less virtual and more on site, but labor is still an issue, and I think it will be for quite a while.
Yeah. It will be for a while. I mean, a lot of, and I mention this every time I speak to somebody, a lot of experienced guys have moved on to something else.
Well, anyone with half a brain would would move on to anything else. Like, why wouldn't you if you had that chance?
Yeah, and then then you get a life, which we didn't have before, right?
Well, but then you lose a lot, and you lose that sense of satisfaction when you've pulled off that's what seems impossible, and you sit back after the last cue and you're like, holy crap, we pulled it off! Like, wow, that was amazing. So I've had a lot of those, and that's why we get up every day and go to work, to have that payoff. Yeah. Especially when there's a kabuki involved, it seems to always have a bit more of a payoff when it actually falls correctly and everything works.
And I remember how many times I've during a gig those complicated gigs where you're just burnt and you have to go on, and at some point at 3-4 a.m. you finish loading the truck after the gig and you shut the door. And just before shutting the door, you say, never again, I'm done. And as soon as the truck leaves, you go, okay, what's the next one?
After you've had a night's sleep and you wake up in the morning, that's maybe when you look for the next one. But
yeah, for some reason, we always go back to it. So, so you actually put together those corporate events. I mean, you orchestrate all the technical aspects, right?
I basically design the technical side of it. Absolutely. I by no means take care of registration or banners or any of that kind of stuff. It's really the audiovisual side of it. So I work very closely, partner with our clients to work out exactly what they need technically. They basically tell me what they're looking to do, what kind of emotion they're looking to portray. And then we, as a group, brainstorm as to how we can do that. Sometimes it's real straightforward and easy. Other times, we've got to do research and actually develop software to make it happen. That's happened quite a number of times, and those are the cool gigs where, the client comes to you and they say, we have this bicycle, and we want the bicycle to be a competition between 3 people. So there's 3 bicycles, and whoever pedals the fastest for the most time wins. How can we make that happen? So we were like, wow, okay, how do we do that? So we ended up making a virtual race, which was on 3 screens in front of these people. It was a video game. We had to develop a video game in 2 months with sensors on the bikes, and really dig into how to do this stuff. I have to mention the brains behind that side of the business, and that's Ozzy Levesque. He's been with me forever, and
I remember
he's got
Ozzy.
This. Of course, who doesn't? You meet him once, and you'll never forget him. So he's got this brain that just works differently than everyone else's, and he can figure out these things, or a way to do these things really, really easily and quickly. So we've had to do that a bunch of times in different projects where it's not off the shelf anymore. We've got to develop hardware, sensors, software that make it run. It's pretty exciting actually when it all works.
Yeah. And I suppose that there's a few sleepless nights among that.
Oh, of course. That's on most projects, right? Anyone that thinks this is 9 to 5,
no, absolutely not.
They're in the wrong business.
Do you recall a time where it just didn't happen?
Not yet.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, I am knocking on wood very vigorously here.
Wow.
But I am probably pretty fortunate that I haven't had a complete and utter failure. Part of that is the people that I surround myself with, that are as dedicated as I am to the project. And I mean, if that weren't the case, I could see people giving up at 2 a.m. and going, no, this is not my problem anymore. I'm out of here, right? But no, I've always had unbelievable crews. Unbelievable. And those are the ones I keep asking to come back, right? It's like,
well, you kind of attract them too. I mean, you're one of the best people I've had the privilege to work with.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because it's the way you treat people too.
Well, thank you. I was very saddened when you left the live event industry, because you were also a joy to work with, and I would have had you back every single gig if you were only available.
Well, you never know.
Keep my number.
You never know. Now, I don't get me wrong. I love my grandfather job right now.
I bet.
I like the comfort of it. But I do miss the action. I do miss the tours, and all that stuff, and the challenge. And
it's like a mother that gives birth. Once they've given birth, they forget at how difficult it was.
That's
and
right.
they just want to have another one, right?
Yeah. Ask me again if I accept a gig and at 3 a.m. nothing's working, and what did I get myself into? I forgot that part.
The worst is when you don't know why something doesn't work. And you don't have a backup, so you've got to figure out how to make this one work, right?
I remember one time we were doing, I don't remember if it was one of your gigs. We were doing this huge screen with multiple projectors, and at one point one of the projectors just let go, which normally doesn't happen because there's backups and whatever. But I don't know, for some reason at that time we lost a projector, and so there was like one black spot on a 100-foot screen. Yeah, maybe I should turn my phone off. I was waiting for your call. So that at that time, that black spot, I was working with Jan, and he looked at me and he says, what can we do? I said, well, let's just grab a couple of movers and I'll just fake it and I'll blend in some colors that look like the rest of the screen. Lucky enough, it was like just scenery. So and I was changing the colors and the textures as the scenery was changing, and we got away with it that time.
As long as they paid the bill, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, sometimes the client will know the effort you put into it, and they'll know how far you went to deliver. And even if sometimes there's always something that goes wrong, right? So some clients will just say, well, yeah, you did everything you could,
It's funny, I've been told many times there's no such thing as the perfect gig ever.
Yeah.
It just, there will always be something that you could have done better, could have been better. So as long as you're willing to not achieve perfection, you'll be very successful in this business.
Well, I'll be honest with you. A lot of times during my career, the client was satisfied with me being at 40% of myself.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a way to motivate anybody.
No, exactly. But it's life, right? I say it because at a certain time you blame yourself for, well, I could have done this, I could have been better, I could
Sure.
whether it's motivated or not. At some point you just can't deliver. You can't deliver what you can deliver, but a lot of times it's there's extra stuff you can do to make yourself happy, but that are not necessarily required to deliver the job.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. That's why we do this. You need to you want to get better each time, right?
Yeah.
You want to outdo the last show you did. If you keep delivering the same show over and over again, you'll get bored and not want to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking for somehow to make it either more efficient, more fun, more enjoyable, something better to watch. A good show is either easy to deliver or easy to watch, but it's not going to be both. So.
Yeah, indeed.
If it was easy to watch, it meant it wasn't easy to deliver. That's usually how it goes, anyway.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you were.
That's all I had.
That's good. So there's a part of you, I know the corporate part of you, and I was aware that you were a musician. And yeah, I got to go there.
Okay, let's go there.
Yeah, I was aware that you were a musician. I knew you were playing keyboards, and that's about all I knew. And recently, I see something about a Queen. Actually, it's a Queen tribute. Yeah.
Yep.
And I've seen a couple of video clips, and I've seen pictures, and it's not one of those cheap versions that I've seen, elsewhere. I mean, this looks a lot like the real thing to me.
Wow. Well, that's nice to hear.
Talk to me.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I'm not. I've brought this up to Queen because that's what I know about you. But what's the story behind it?
So, like many people in the audiovisual business, they seem to be musicians as well.
Yeah.
It's kind of not a huge leap from one to the other. You're pushing cases around till the wee hours of the morning, loading trucks, moving around, doing shows. So it was natural for me. I was actually a musician first.
Okay.
Probably like yourself, I think.
Yeah. Well, I only started in '69.
Okay. So I think music was first. As it was for me, I started when I was 5 years old in '73. So taking piano lessons, and
well, I was 5 years old too. So now you can tell our ages. Okay.
Okay. So Yeah, so I started in piano lessons like a lot of kids do. From there, my family were very church oriented, and joined the choir at our church because I wanted to play. I wanted to play piano in different environments. So I did that for a while. Then in school, I joined my first band in high school, jamming on cover songs. And then in CEGEP, joined a band which was a little more professional and had original songs, and we're actually trying to do something with it. Band was called Simon Says, and we had an album after I left CEGEP, had an album, we toured with it, had a bit of airplay, marginal success. I did that for about 10 years. And that was, I think, my one shot at it, because everyone says, you have a shot and you got to take your shot. And that was it. And it didn't work out. And I was resigned to the fact, okay, I'm not going to be a professional musician. I got to move on, and it'll always be a hobby, but I've got to find something that is going to pay the bills. And audiovisual was it. And I understood XLR cables, and I knew how they worked. So I figured I could figure out the rest of it. So yeah, that's how I got into audiovisual, because I had left music. But it was always a love of mine. So I stayed, active in music, and was in a couple of cover bands here and there. Recently, it's been 15 years now. I joined a Queen tribute band with the singer from Simon Says. So he had been performing as Freddie Mercury in a tribute in Europe for many, many years, and was looking to move home. And he's like, look, I want to move back to Canada. Would you be interested in putting this band together? So the drummer from Simon Says, the guitar player, myself, hired a few other people and created Queen Flash. And it's been growing every year. It seems to get bigger and bigger. And, we've played on a few cruises, and we've played a lot around the U.S. We played recently at the Hard Rock Cafe in Times Square. So we're getting out there and playing some gigs.
Small places. So how do you manage to, to do your AV? I say job,
Sure.
but it's more a career. How do you manage both? I mean, I understand playing in a band is pretty taking. I mean,
It can be at the beginning anyway, when you need to rehearse a lot.
Yeah.
Luckily, we've been at this so long now that we don't actually need to rehearse. It's not like there's more material to learn.
Yeah.
Once you've got the repertoire of tunes, the top 20, 30 songs that Queen ever had, it's not like you got to learn anything else. So, that side of it is pretty easy. The other point is I actually book Queen Flash. So I can see when my schedule is open, when my schedule isn't, and I'm able to wrangle the two together. But honestly, it's very, very rare that I have to decline a Queen Flash show, because it's always on a weekend. It's always a Friday night or a Saturday, and there's no corporate work usually on a Friday night or a Saturday. So I'm lucky that way that I can juggle the two. Everything is closed right now, so it's not really an issue. But last summer we played, I think, 35 nights throughout the summer. We were making up for all the gigs that we had to postpone, so we were playing every weekend, all over the place, from all the way down to South Carolina to past Ohio. So
if you had the opportunity, would you do that full time?
If it paid enough, but that's the problem.
Well, that was
music.
That was sort of my hidden question.
Yeah,
I mean, could you make a living out of it?
I could make a modest living out of it. I couldn't support, a 5-person family like I have, on a musician's salary. It's just not feasible. I'm not sure at what level you'd have to be at to be able to do that, but I don't think the tribute band route is it, unless unless I'm missing something, but the math just doesn't add up. But it's my passion, right? It was my first love, and I will always be a musician till the day I die. So as long as I can always have something to do musically, it's great. So, this Queen tribute band is making pretty decent money right now. We're traveling in a pretty nice vehicle. Mm-hmm. So it's not like the old days of, traveling in beat up old trucks that break down all the time. It's a lot more civilized, which makes it a lot more fun. And, you're not on each other's nerves in the truck because you're comfortable and you're having a good day, So it's still a lot of fun to do. So as long as it's fun, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't go back to the days of beaten up trucks and,
no,
repairs in the middle of the night and whatever. I wouldn't go back to that, but it's, I think of it as good times.
Oh, yeah.
At the time, when we had the energy and maybe the carelessness to do it.
Well, and, zero responsibility back then, right? So it was all about today. It wasn't about tomorrow. It was about right now. So let's have fun. Let's go out and get drunk and have a good time. So be careful what I say. So today it's not about that. It's about I love the people I play with right now. They're like brothers and sisters to me. They're fabulous people. I like to be around them. If it weren't for that, I don't think I'd be doing it. So I don't see it as a job, and I don't see it as a possible replacement for my company, but I see it as a really, really cool pastime.
All right.
That's a lot of fun.
Well, that's cool. And you got to let me know when you're in the area. I want to see that show.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
For sure. I mean, at one point I saw you were in Brassard.
Yeah, we play there quite often at Le Club in Brassard.
Well, let me know next time you're there. That's 10 minutes from where I live. So,
okay.
Going back to Aileron.
Yeah.
I got this weird question. I mean, what is the weirdest or most challenging thing you had to do on one of those gigs?
I think the weirdest, well, yeah, it's probably not the same event. Weirdest and most challenging.
There could be 2 or 3 answers. I got all the time in the world. I have 32 gigs of memory here. So.
Let's eat it up. So most challenging is usually when there's many companies involved in a project. I find that's usually the most challenging shows. That there's a company doing decor, there's a company doing catering, there's another company doing whatever it is, red carpet, and somebody else is doing the...
Bringing back memories.
So when you've got all those companies involved and everyone thinks that their bit of the project is the most important, including myself, because to me, that is the most important, right?
Yeah.
But to the caterer, their heaters are the most important thing to have functional. So, but what I've learned over the years is to take that step back and look at it as a project, and that everybody is working for the same goal, to have a successful event. And as soon as you can get everybody else involved on that same page, the better your event's going to be, because then the caterer cares about the decor guy, and the decor guy cares about the guy bringing in the statues, and all the way around the table. So I usually at the first meeting try to instill that in everybody and really make sure that they understand that I know your bid is important, but let's think, if I don't succeed, you're probably not coming back as well. So let's think of this as a team effort, and if there's anything I can do to help you, I will definitely be there to do it, and hopefully it's vice versa, But when they're not in that mindset, that's when it gets challenging. And
It all comes down to attitude.
It sure does.
Yeah.
Anybody could bring a truck full of gear to an event, right? But it's having the right people and the right people's skills within those people to have that event be successful. And I'll say it all the time. It's all about the team. It's all about the people that are there. And that's definitely the most important thing. And it is becoming the hardest part of this job is getting the right people there, because the people that are left are super busy. And, a lot of them have left the business, and that's the struggle. So I'm having to, relay that message to the client end of things and say, look, this is not pre-COVID times. We have got to think differently about your event, and you can't spring these things on me a couple of weeks out. It's just not going to work. It's a different world right now. So that's probably the most challenging.
Yeah, I guess it'll make people realize that there's a lot involved in asking things at the last minute and being unorganized. I remember going to a venue once, and there was a sign backstage that said, your lack of organization does not necessarily become our emergency.
I love that one. That's awesome.
There's another thing that's running in my mind, and I say this often, but I think in French and I speak in English, so sometimes the words come out funny. So if I say something that doesn't make sense, just let me know. I'll rephrase it. But there's one thing I'd like to know: the transition between when you were working at Bombardier and when you started Aileron. How did that happen for you? I mean, at one time you've got this secure job, and then all of a sudden, or I don't know how fast it happened, but then you find out that you don't have that job anymore, and you got to get creative, turn around, and do something else. How did that? How did you live that? How did you get through that?
It was probably the scariest time of my life, because exactly that. I went from the cushy career job that I thought was going to last forever to having to pivot real quick and come up with a plan. And
you had a family at that time, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I had a family, and I basically rolled the dice, put everything I own on the line, and hope that the dice comes up right,
Wow.
So yeah, it was pretty scary. I was I wasn't as brave as you think. I had no choice. It was one of those things. The writing was on the wall at Bombardier. They were definitely going to close the department. I jumped ship before the ship started sinking.
Oh, okay.
I jumped, which was just pure luck. I quit Bombardier. I still can't believe I did it. The end of August 2001. So I think it was August 27th was my official departure date. We all know what happened September 11th, 2001, less than 2 weeks later. So I quit my job, and then the whole world stopped.
Yeah.
And I was like, what have I done? Like, this is crazy. So, I thought real long and hard about what I could do to save this situation. And, Bombardier were already thinking of outsourcing, but 9/11 just accelerated it, immediately. So I was like, okay, I know this is coming. Let's plan and get a plan together. So it's, two of my friends and myself decided to put a business plan together, present it to a bank, get a loan, get an office, get everything up and running. And then we were ready. As soon as they closed the department, we were already up and running. So
how sure were you to pick up that contract? Not at all, right?
50-50.
50-50? Well, you did have a foot in the door, right?
I did. I was lucky enough to have a foot in the door, and I knew a lot of people internally. So, but it was still a gamble. My boss at Bombardier did the exact same thing. He set up his own company at the same time, and we turned into competitors overnight. You know, I didn't know he was doing that. He didn't know I was doing that.
No.
Next thing we know, we're bidding on the same shows, and I'm like, what is going on? And I'm like, I don't have a chance. I'm bidding against the guy who was my boss. But it was funny. I serviced a lot of clients internally that I got along with really well, and so did he. So there was actually room for both of us, and we ended up working together on a couple of things. But it was kind of natural the way it kind of just happened. The people that I used to service when I was internal just kept coming to me because they knew that I knew what they needed, and it's the same for him. So we kind of just naturally worked out the right way without us even trying. So
Wow.
but it was still a scary time. I mean, I was not sleeping at night, let's put it that way.
I can understand. So if you were to go back to that period, would you do everything the same way you did? You know, with what you know now.
Oh my God. With what I know now, I would probably associate with different people than the two friends that I associated with.
Okay.
I would probably look for someone with a bit of experience in business, maybe. That might have been a good asset, because none of us knew what we were doing. We were like, you know, people that had been working for other people all our lives, and suddenly we need to deal with banks and lawyers and insurance companies, and overnight we're like, what have we gotten ourselves into? Like, this is crazy. What, we need 10 million of liability insurance? What? Like, where do you get that? I don't know. Yeah, thank God for you know, the internet and friends that were already in business that helped me along the way here and there. But it was crazy. What we did was stupid. Don't anyone listening, don't do it that way. Don't just jump in without a plan.
I read a book once that kind of explained why most businesses fail. And you know, in short, it's passionate people who love to do what they do, and they want to be their own bosses, and they want to have their own companies. And the biggest mistake that somebody can do is working in their company rather than working on their company.
Yeah.
So you're kind of working for yourself, which doesn't really make sense. You should have other people working for you, and you should be managing your company. And managing 100%. A company is not the thing that you love to do.
Exactly the problem. Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't want to do invoicing. I don't want to do projections. I don't want to, do year ends. I don't want to do that stuff. I want to produce events. So what I do is the stuff that I hate to do, I'll do early in the morning. So when I come into work, I know that that's the stuff I have to do. And that allows me or rewards me the time to work on actual events in the afternoon. So that's how I organize my day. It doesn't work for everybody, but I do the stuff I don't like to do first.
And the other solution is to outsource it. But normally that creates conflict, because if you're outsourcing, that means you're dealing with somebody who's going to stop you from doing what you want to do. A lot of times.
True. Yeah, absolutely.
Because the numbers don't work out. And, and I've been through it also. I mean, it's sometimes you want to do something so much that you just don't care about the numbers. You hide them. You don't want to see them. And you go ahead and do it. And
I've been there.
Yeah. And today I'm glad I did. I wouldn't do it again.
Yeah.
It's a good thing I didn't know what I was doing at the time.
There are times when, you're a lighting guy. There are times that, I'll say, look, I know we don't need 10 Vipers on this show, but we're going to put them because it's going to be so bloody cool. Yeah. Whatever it is, funny though, when we're talking about business, I've gotten to know this guy. it's a bit of a long story, but his name is Alex Lindsay, and he's an event producer. He's turned into a sole virtual event producer. He's from California. And at the beginning of the pandemic, I'd been following him a while on Twitter, and he's a pretty smart guy, and he's been doing events a very long time. He started in film and got into 3D design, and anyway, now he's a show producer. And he started this group called Office Hours at the beginning of the pandemic. And what it was is his way of giving back to the community time for questions. People that had to, pivot, get their business online, start doing online events. They needed information. They needed a place to go to ask a question and get an answer. So every single day since the beginning of the pandemic in March 2020, he's been hosting an online Zoom event every morning from 6 to 9 in the West Coast. So that's like 9 to noon here. And it's a group of guys that do what we do, and they all get online, and the show is run by the questions. So if you need to know why your Blackmagic camera is not talking to your Blackmagic A10 Mini Pro, you go on there, you tell them what your problem is, and somebody on the panel will have an answer for you and tell you exactly why it's not working. Because there's probably 20, 30 people on the panel every morning, and they're from all different walks of life. If it's, video, audio, sound, whatever it is. This community is growing and growing. They're just about to launch what's called Office Hours 2.0, which is a 100% virtual professional show. Basically looks like network television, but is produced with Zoom, 1080p, everyone in their own homes, and cut and produced like an actual television show. And it's, again, questions from the audience about media and technology. So I would highly suggest anybody that's interested in that kind of thing to go check it out. It's Office Hours officehours.global is where you would go. And I'm on the panel every so often when I have time, and I'll answer the odd question that comes my way that I have experience in. But there's probably a few thousand people that rotate through the panel, and all take their turns to, man the panel and answer questions. And it's quite an amazing group of people. It's open to everybody. Doesn't matter what your skill level is or where you're from. There are people from all over the world on it. I've met guys, I'm friends now with people from Australia, South Africa, Germany, tons throughout the US. And the cool thing is now I know that if I have an event in, Cape Town, South Africa, I know the guy to call if I have an issue, because I've gotten to know him over this pandemic time. So it's always good to broaden your network and get to know people, but it's also given back, and it's a really positive community. I'd highly suggest you check it out. So.
I certainly will. I mean, I've been in all sorts of associations, and this is probably the most coolest thing I've ever seen. And this is an original idea.
It is. I started telling the story because one of Alex's things to say is you need to work yourself out of a job in your own company. You shouldn't have, like on a show, let's say, if you're running an event, don't give yourself the show caller role or the video switch role, or you don't have a role. You need to trust the people around you and put people in the chairs that you need to put. And your job is to manage the client. That is your only job. And make sure that the show goes off without a hitch, right?
You're so right.
I'm striving for that. It's not an easy one.
Even listen, I'm in the position of the technician. Okay, I'm the guy who does the lights, and I have to refer to somebody who's on top of the show, so that I can get answers or so that I can give information to. And when that person is busy operating something else, it drives me crazy.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense. And, I've been guilty of it for many years. I've always known that is an issue. It's just so hard to let go. Yep. It's really, really hard to let go. I hear it's freeing. That's what I hear. Yeah,
I understand. And sometimes it's just quicker to do it yourself, or it's just comforting to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And but then again, putting the right people in the right places is also a challenge.
Absolutely. You need to have 100% confidence in that person that they're going to do what you think should be done, right? Mm-hmm. But what I'm realizing is, being a jack of all trades, there are people that are specialized in every one of those roles that are probably much, much better at it than I am. So I'm realizing that, and that my last step is the show caller role. That's what I've been doing for the last few shows, and I need to stop doing that. So if you know any good show callers, let me know.
I sure will. I'll tell you one thing. I mean, it's how many technical directors have asked me, well, I'd like to learn to operate a light board. I said, oh, sure, no problem. All you have to do is do it full time. End of conversation.
Be honest. Yeah, exactly. That is the one position I can't do. Funny enough, I could sit at anybody else's desk on a show and operate it. I'd get by. But
it's like anything.
To program that lighting board, forget it.
Well,
it's not going to happen.
The thing about the lighting board is that it becomes an extension of your brain. It becomes an extension of your hands, of your intention. And it's just a tool. That's all it is. But all the work is happening inside your head. And if your head is busy, managing this and that, you won't get, oh, sure, the lights will turn on. Sure, you'll have, light cues and whatever. And you'll probably have the key lighting you need, but you won't have that finishing touch.
Absolutely.
Because you just can't put all your attention into it. So that's why, and that's why I've worked with people who probably weren't very liked in the business, because they absolutely needed to have a head electric with them. They absolutely needed to have a team around them. And all they did was sit down and program, and, they'd get to a show and they'd go to the hotel and do their thing while the other guys were setting up and the other guys were running after the staff and all that. And these guys were walking in as stars, sitting behind their consoles and programming. And you probably know who I'm talking about. And
maybe.
Yeah, and thanks to those people, I had some cool gigs, because they were kind of shoved aside. And after a few years, I realized that they weren't totally wrong, because they could put all their energy into making the magic happen, into doing the stuff that you just don't have the energy to do if you're brain dead because you were setting up for 14 hours. So. After a while, I understood that, and I figured, when I've said at the beginning of the interview, when I said I was 40% of myself sometimes, and it did the job, and the client was happy, not because I had drank the night before, but it was probably because I had been setting up for 16 hours or something like that, and I was just brain dead, and I was running on autopilot.
Yeah.
So you can still deliver, but I could have done a lot better too,
It's funny, because as a producer, I should know as well that when the lighting guy is asking me if I need help with the video wall because it's not working, my knee jerk is, oh, that's great. He's willing to pitch in and help and be a team player. But I'm learning now to say no to that and say no, because I don't want both the lighting and the video wall to fail now, because, because you're now been taken away from the job you're here for, trying to help somebody else. So it's a tricky thing, right? It's that balance between being a team player wanting to help, but not at the expense of your own job, right? So there's a guy that comes to mind who works with me a lot, and he's super wanting to help all the time, and I actually have to tell him, dude, it's good, just program your board.
Sometimes it's necessary. I understand sometimes there's a panic and you know, you need all the help you can get, or the budget just isn't there. I mean,
right.
There's been, you know, I don't think you're at that level anymore, but there's a lot of productions out there that just don't have the budget, and, you know, you have to get everybody to do everything. So
I try not to take those shows anymore, but it happens though sometimes, for sure. Part of being a team player is looking out and making sure everyone's able to do the job they're there to do, right? It's not only helping out everybody else, but you know, you were one of those guys that would always pitch in no matter what was, you know, bombs going off all around you. You would be one of those guys that were willing to help no matter what the job was. If it was hanging curtain, you would pitch in and do it. I remember seeing you doing stuff that was way out of your wheelhouse, so you get it for sure.
Yeah, well, sometimes being a nice guy is a good thing, and sometimes it's a bad thing.
Yeah, they finish last, from what I hear.
Mostly, yeah, that's right. And it mostly depends on who you're working for. If you're working for somebody who understands, you're good. If you're working for somebody who always wants more, then you got to pull back. You know, you got to impose. So.
I still find it amazing that I'm still learning how to do this job. You know,
when you stop learning, the candle will blow out, and you're just gonna lose it. So you got to keep learning.
Absolutely, and you know, the tech side of me still wants to learn, and that's a big reason I go to office hours every morning, is to learn stuff. I'm a naturally inquisitive person. You know, I want to know how stuff works, and I think that's why my vice principal saw that in grade 4. You know, that I was very inquisitive and wanted to know how things worked. So he lit that fire in me, and it's still lit. It's still going. So
yeah. Sometimes it's just one little thing
absolutely
that kicks it off. Well, Matthew, it's how long have we been talking? About an hour now.
About that.
That was really cool. Listen, before we sign off, is there anything, a message you'd like to leave to people? Something that's in your head that you would like other people to remember?
Sure. The world is a different place than it was 2 years ago. And be kind. Be kind to the people around you. Be kind to the person at the other side of that counter, the other end of that phone. Every single person you talk to or interact with these days are going through something, or have lost somebody, or are, you know, challenged because of somebody didn't show up for work that day. Whatever it is, be kind. Simple.
That is a very wise message. And I agree with it. And actually, the first time I heard that, be kind, was in, the series Kung Fu back in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The master, that was his advice, be kind. Things like that you don't forget, right?
Yeah. Well, I've been preaching that for the last at least year and a bit. It's because, you just see people that don't understand that it's a different place right now than what it used to be. So be a little more patient.
That's right. So just one last question. With your band, Queen Flash, do you have any gigs booked coming up? Or
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what's coming up?
We're playing Quebec City on the 28th. It's an indoor venue that has balconies. It's a hotel, and they have balconies that overlook an indoor atrium.
Oh, yeah.
So it's called the Palace Royale.
Palace
is
Royale.
what it's
Okay.
called. Yeah. It's downtown Quebec City, and we're playing there on the Friday.
Cool.
We were supposed to play chez Maurice the Saturday, the 29th, but that's not happening.
No.
And then we got some gigs in Calgary, the same thing, indoor hotel that's got balconies on each room. So that's what we've been reduced to right now.
Yeah.
In March, we've got a bunch of shows in the States, Atlantic City and stuff like that. So
Cool.
and we'll be back at Le Club, I think, in April or May, something like that. So I'll let you know when we're there, and
Yeah,
I'll get you
please
down.
do. Please do.
They got a killer lighting rig there. It's really cool.
At Le Club.
Yeah.
Is still Dominique Morissette, the lighting
It sure
guy?
is.
Yeah,
You know?
a good friend of mine.
He's a wonderful, not only a wonderful person, a wonderful LD. He
Yes.
is amazing.
Yeah, very
Love the guy.
talented and a very nice guy too. I worked with him
Yeah.
a few times. Like a lot of LDs I never work with because we do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But for some reason we wound up. I remember this one gig we were doing in Kanawaki. It was a huge tent, and we had the Beach Boys there, the original
cool.
Beach Boys, or what's
Wow.
left of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they had their lighting guy that came, and there were supposed to be two local guys doing the follow spots, and they didn't show up, as business as usual. So then I look at Dom and I said, "Well, you take the left one, I take the right one." He says, "Yeah, sure." So then we go up, and it was so noisy in there. The LD was trying to call the shots, and we couldn't hear a thing over the clear comm. So I just climbed down the scaffold, went over the light guy, tapped on his shoulder. I said, "Dude, I know these guys. You can't believe how much I know these songs. I think I know them better than you do. Don't worry about it. I know who does
got
what.
this."
It'll be fine."
That's great.
So anyway, that
gotta
was one thing I did with Dom.
I got to ask him about that when I see him next.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm pretty
that's
sure he
super.
remembers.
Wonderful. Congrats on this not webcast. It is a podcast. Congrats on this podcast.
Thank you.
I've listened to a few of them. It's very enjoyable, and you do a great interview. So congrats, man.
Wow, thank you very much.
You've found your little niche. I like it.
Who would have thought? When I used to listen to a WKRP in Cincinnati back.
Les Nessman.
Les Nessman.
I loved that show. That was a wonderful show.
Yeah, that was really cool. What was the guy's name? The
Herb Tarlick?
the Herb was the salesman.
Johnny Fever?
Johnny Fever. Yeah, he was my favorite. Oh,
Yeah,
well.
he was excellent. But the best was the what do you call it, the Thanksgiving episode with when the turkeys were flying out of the helicopter. So just watch it. Look up WKRP, and it's Theater of the Mind, because they didn't have budgets to do any kind of special effects, right?
Yeah.
So it's just the reporter going, like, describing what he's looking at, but you're not seeing any of it, right? So, but it's priceless. They play it every year. You seem to see it somewhere at Thanksgiving. So
I'll have to have a
look
look
that
at
up.
that.
Yeah, WKRP Thanksgiving. Check it out.
All right. Cool.
Cool, dude.
Well, thank you.
This was a lot of fun.
All right.
Cool, man. Thanks so much for having me. I can't believe
Huge
I'm on
pleasure.
a podcast. Can't believe that.
All right. Take care, Matt. See you soon.
Take care of yourself.
Bye-bye. Good night.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
The Backstage Cowboys podcast is brought to you by AVL Media Group and Avolights, who make the best lighting consoles in the world. If you live in Canada, you now have access to the Avolights Academy online learning platform. The cost is $229, and that includes an editor Avo key delivered directly to your door. Head on over to BackstageCowboys.com and click on the Avolights Academy logo to get all the details.